Good morning, my fellow Martians. Welcome to another episode of Mixed Martian Arts. My name is Austin Shaper, and this is a daily show where we explore the topics of UAP, UFC, and World War III. Today is going to be the very first hybrid video that I've done. And what I mean by that is I always do my best job to separate the three topics that I cover. And the reason I do that is pretty simple. It's mainly for the fact that I don't want somebody who comes across my page and who is interested in one of or maybe two of the subjects that I cover. I don't want them to have to sit and listen to me ramble about, let's say, UAP, the UFO phenomenon, and they're here to listen to geopolitical World War III stuff, or maybe you're here for the UFC and the World War III stuff, but you don't care for the UFO stuff. Whatever combination it may be, I do my best to separate these three forms, but today is going to be a rare exception to that, and there's a good reason for it. Let me explain. Before we dive into the video, do me a favor, if you guys enjoy this content, subscribe to the channel. Just click the subscribe. It really helps me out. It's something free you could do to support the channel. I really appreciate every single person who's found my page on this giant platform where there's a million other great content creators. I'm just having a blast doing this, and I would love to reach more and more people, and you guys can help me do that by hitting that subscribe button. So thank you guys so much. Now, getting into today's topic, and the reason why I'm merging these for a rare exception is because I was out to dinner with my buddies last night, right? And we were just talking about life, talking about the world, et cetera, and we got to discussing the fact that we all three felt like something big is brewing, something is coming down the pipe. And we kind of hypothesized what it could be, why we feel this way, and it just really resonated with me to the point where I wanted to make a short video today to discuss this feeling, this intuition that it seems like there's like a global consciousness about. It seems like wherever you turn on the internet, people feel, in a variety of ways, of course, it's the internet, you're going to get that, but people really largely seem to feel that I see online and even in person that something big is coming, not just to America, but to the world at large. And I wanted to discuss today, what is that? What is that feeling that we have? Is that feeling justified? And what potentially could be coming that is kind of like spiking up everybody's intuition as to, like, we have this awareness that something potentially bad, or at least paradigm altering, I guess you could say, is coming down the pipe sooner rather than later. I truly do believe that. What could that be is what we're going to discuss today. And first off, let me just say, before diving into my theories as to why we feel this way and what is potentially coming, is the way we feel. If you feel that way, maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you think everything's peachy and nothing's coming down the pipe. That's possible. But the majority of people I see do not agree with that. So for the sake of this video, let's kind of put everybody into a big lump and say that in general, we feel that that some major event or maybe series of events is going to be taking place rather soon. There's multiple ways to look at it. In one way, you could look at it as, oh, we only feel that way because social media, because the news, the mainstream news, legacy news, combined with all the independent creators such as myself, combined with social media and the way that videos pick up traction so fast, like every major event, for example, we can reference these Hawaii fires that are taking place currently. They spread rapidly all over the internet, and then you see all kinds of theories about the purpose of these events and if somebody's orchestrating all these kinds of things. I'm not specifically speaking about Hawaii, but I'm speaking of just at large, all the events taking place simultaneously across the globe we now have access to. It's not like we're in the 50s where we had to wait to read the daily newspaper and you're mainly hearing about one or two large issues in the world and then a lot of local news. We're getting it all spewed into our brains daily, every single day at rapid volume. Do I think that factors into this emotion, this feeling that something's coming? I do, of course. How could you not? The way that the internet is evolving and social media is evolving is absolutely impacting the inputs we're getting at the rate of speed and the rate of events. And, you know, when you see a major event take place back in, back in time, back throughout history, there was like the mainstream news covering it and maybe people local in your town talking about it, but that was kind of it. There wasn't a million, content creators such as myself out there kind of speculating and sharing their interpretation of events. You didn't really get that. So now you're getting that at volume. Could that factor in? Absolutely. But my counterpoint to that is, while that is true, and the world has always been a crazy place, I've been very obsessed for the past few years with studying World War II books, reading diaries of people who went through that experience, because I just think it was so paradigm shifting and had such a big impact on the world at large that, it just fascinates me that something on a scale that has nothing to do with you, thousands of miles away, can affect your day-to-day life. I think that's really profound, and it just really sparked my interest. And I think that when you look at it as a whole, yes, the world has always been a crazy place. There's always been crazy events going on, always. Since we had news, since we had the internet, since we had TV, we've been hearing about crazy shit going on in the world. The world's a crazy place with wars and famine and disease and conspiracy and all kinds of stuff mixed into one melting pot that results into us thinking that things are crazy, potentially thinking they're crazier than they are. I definitely admit that is true, but my counterpoint to that is that there's a convergence now of so much going on, and that's why I had to make this a hybrid video, because there's so much going on simultaneously right now, and it seems like with how complex society is, it's very fragile. It's very susceptible to disastrous consequences. I mean, let's just go down a quick little list of some of the geopolitical and domestic issues we have going on right now. You obviously have the Russia-Ukraine war. You have potentially China-Taiwan. You've got Iran developing nuclear weapons and wanting to go at it with Israel. You've got Israel wanting to go at it with Iran. You've got North Korea wanting to go at it with South Korea. You have the United States wanting to go at it with pretty much the whole gamut. Iran, North Korea, Russia, China. There's probably more on that list that I'm not referencing at the moment. There's so much going on in the geopolitical sphere that is has the potential for disastrous consequences. I guess you could say, namely right now, the forefront of that would be the Russia-Ukraine war, right? Because if this thing turns into a direct conflict with NATO versus Russia, United States versus Russia, things could get real bad real fast. I think most people admit that, most people see that, and both sides are kind of talking about nuclear war and nukes being fired off as like a casual afterthought, like, oh yeah, Putin's backed into a corner, he could definitely use nukes, but we'll stop him. Or you hear multiple perspectives on it, but that's just one thing in the geopolitical sphere, the Russia-Ukraine war. And then, like I said, you got all the stuff heating up in the Pacific. You have North Korea going crazy, and they have nuclear weapons. You've got all that converging. You also have the presidential election upcoming here with Donald Trump's potential indictment, and all the people who support him up in arms about it. And then vice versa, you have the Biden administration making some pretty crazy moves on all fronts as far as domestically goes. And my channel is not really I don't really cover domestic or political issues. It's not where my interest or fascination lies. And but that is one issue that we should still address, because the potential for disruption in society, especially here, we'll just speak in America, during this upcoming election is profound. It really is. And I think that if you look at the perspective of countries like China and Russia, I think that they could capitalize on something as crazy and as divisive as American politics, especially heating up in such a way that it is, potential with Biden and Trump facing off in this next election. You have got that going on. On top of that, you have the potential for another disease, another sickness spreading all over the world, such as COVID. We don't want the algorithm to pick it up and our thoughts on that, so we'll just breeze right past that. But I think when COVID happened, it really opened up it almost put us, we talked about this at dinner last night, it almost put us into like some parallel universe where anything is possible now. Like, we got to see government overreach, government control. We got to see the masses kind of go at each other's throats because we didn't know what was real, what was fake. And we saw how fragile society is and how that thin veil of safety, of normalcy, can fall apart in a quick amount of time, in short order. And luckily, we kind of came out the other side of that okay, all things considered. The world is kind of back to normal. There's a lot of changes that now stayed permanent because of that. And so the potential, we've heard countless time and time again, Bill Gates and all these other guys saying there's going to be another event that could happen like that. And and it could be more disastrous than the first one. We've all heard that. We've heard countless speculation on that. So you have domestic, just here in America, you have the domestic issues reaching a maximum critical level where you could have something like the January 6th event happen at scale all over the world. If we have something odd go with the elections, or some sort of dispute about the election, or someone, such as Trump, is basically booted out of the race due to his indictment, and then you have all these millions of supporters who wanted to vote for him and can't, up in arms. There's just potential for so much on the domestic side, the geopolitical side, and now let's address the other one. You're seeing this all over the place now, all over the internet, about the UFO phenomenon reaching this new stage, this new era where the government is being forced to kind of address the issue. We just saw John Kirby come on the White House press a few days back, and people were asking him directly, do we have a reverse engineering UFO program? Of course, he breezed right over the answer and just said, we have AARO, we have this organization to document these cases and to correlate these cases, and if we didn't take it seriously, we wouldn't have done that. Meanwhile, we all know, if anybody keeps up with the news, AARO is bullshit. The entire organization is like the next Project Blue Book. So you have the United States government kind of being forced into the light, dragged kicking and screaming on this issue. Some people believed it's part of a managed disclosure. You just had the UFO hearings. You had David Grush, one of the most credible, highest ranking with access to classified material, saying that he's interviewed over 40 people in this legacy program, reverse engineering these craft, getting hold of bodies. And this is kind of reaching, these are events that if you follow the UFO phenomenon, such as myself, you've known about this stuff for decades and decades, but now it's reaching the mainstream in a way that it never has. And the potential for any sort of reveal, any sort of disclosure, whether it's a partial disclosure, whether it's just confirmation, hey, this non-human intelligence does exist. You just had Chuck Schumer propose this legislation to reveal a disclosure plan, a disclosure effort that's right there in the litigation, in the wording of the bill, and talking about all these private aerospace companies turning over any craft they have, any non-Earth material possessions, any non-human intelligence evidence, turning it over. So you have that sparking the curiosity and the intrigue of the world. And, that goes down the rabbit hole. Some people think that's Project Bluebeam. This is being set up by the government. It's fake. You have other people thinking that this is just reaching a point where the secret can't be kept much longer. I'm kind of more on that side. If you were to pin me down and say, give me your prediction, I think that it's either a managed disclosure or the government's just being dragged into the light unwillingly. I don't think it's a Project Bluebeam thing, but suffice it to say that there's a geopolitical thing going on. There's this global potential of the revealing of UFOs and non-human intelligence, alien beings of some sort. Mixed in with all that other stuff I just mentioned. You got a lot going on. So is that what is causing us to feel that way? Obviously, I would say that is the case. Now, what is the possibility that one of those is going to pop off? I think it's probable. And if we're going to go down the rabbit hole of, let's say, my top predictions of what what this awareness is, what's actually going to happen. We all feel that, most of us, I should say, feel that something is brewing and it's going to be here shortly, maybe this year, maybe the beginning of next year, maybe during the actual election, next fall, whenever that is. As far as a prediction goes, it's very hard to make a prediction. The world is rather unpredictable, and when we think something is the case, it often ends up being a complete 180 of what we went into it thinking. That being said, I think that the most realistic, plausible option, if we're not talking about anything in the realm of the UFO department, is I would say that the potential for a global conflict, World War III, is probably the most likely. And I didn't even touch on the economic issues that the world is dealing with, and also the implications of if this conflict with Russia and Ukraine does go global, it does go hot with NATO and China and all these other countries at play. It's going to ruin the economy. We know that the economy is now so dependent upon each other because we have a global economy, and it's so much different than how it was in the past. And if a war does break out, God forbid, not only are we going to have to deal with the kinetic effects of that in the actual conflict in a combative sense, but we also have to deal with the economic repercussions, maybe even in countries that are neutral on the war itself. So that's something that could affect every single one of us in a day-to-day life aspect, same as World War II. People who even weren't fighting on the front, they still had to be in the breadlines. They still had to work in factories to help the cause, and my point being is that I do think that's the most realistic option if we're going through all these different options out there. I think that World War III is probably the most likely one. This is kind of the recipe you guys have seen time and time again. World War I, World War II, they start in Europe, bigger countries get dragged in, it spirals out of control due to some triggering event, and then boom, before you know it, the whole world is at war. I always reference how the American population was told before we jumped into the war that, your boys will not be fighting in a European war. Fast forward 6 months from when that statement was made by the running candidate for president, we were at war. And, that came to, that was due to the fact probably that Japan attacked us, and that dragged us into the war. But my point being, they say something's not going to happen, and then we see it happen. So right now, our government, the American government, does not seem to be overly concerned with Russia attacking us or overly concerned with the idea of a nuclear war. They're not all that worried about it, which is very alarming to me. That throws up red flags all over the place because they need to be concerned because, this isn't World War II. The weapons that are at play now and the potential use of these weapons it's altering to human civilization. And one nuke being fired off doesn't necessarily mean Armageddon, but it could spiral out of control into a nuclear winter. It could spiral out of control into a couple of nukes being fired off and ruining the power grid, destabilizing society, and everybody starts prepping, and it just ruins the market. The stock market tanks. I think that's the most realistic outcome if we're talking about all these possible options. I do think a war spiraling out of control is very plausible right now. I think if we're talking probability, it may even be over 50% because there's no resolution to this conflict thus far with Russia and Ukraine. It's not going good. It seems like it's more of a stalemate back and forth than anything right now. But when it heats up to the point where Ukraine starts to lose this war of attrition in a dramatic way, where they're retreating and losing land at a rapid pace, Russia is advancing. We talked about this in a previous World War III episode, that I don't believe that America, with how much money they've invested, how many hundreds of billions they've invested, I don't think they're willing to lose this battle. I don't think it's for a moral cause. I think we have our own reasons for why we can't afford to let Ukraine lose the war. So if Ukraine starts losing in a drastic way, I do think NATO could get involved rather than let Russia take more Ukrainian territory. On the flip side, if Russia starts to lose in a dramatic way, Putin is 70 years old, and he's got the most nuclear weapons in the entire universe. So you back a man like that into a corner, it's likely, late in his life, he would do something drastic. So the potential of that conflict going hot, I think, could be the primary reason why we feel this way. We have not seen in our lifetime a conflict with nations as big as Russia and NATO, America. We haven't seen it yet, and so we don't know what to expect. We just don't know. It could evolve and spiral out of control in a variety of ways, including sparking another conflict in the Pacific with Taiwan and China, which then would automatically have to drag in NATO or Japan or Australia, United States, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the most probable outcome and the reason why we feel this way. Second one is I do think this UFO phenomenon is for whatever reason why, we can argue back and forth about the reasons. I'm open to hearing suggestions, but I do think it's reaching a forefront, and I do think there is a purpose to it. I don't think it's just random. I think there is something going on here. A lot of people believe that it's faked, or this is just the government being using this as a distraction. I have said time and time again that I believe the UFO as a distraction theory is a rather lazy thinking. And if they wanted to come up with distractions, there's a lot better, easier ones than trying to potentially reveal UFOs and non-human intelligence to us. A lot of people say, oh, the government is coming out with this. But let's clarify, let's be specific. It's not the government coming out. I just told you guys what John Kirby said, and he didn't come out and say that. He didn't confirm this stuff. Where it's coming from is one person in particular, David Grush, is really the one who's leading the charge on this with his testimony and his interviewing of these 40 witnesses who allegedly were in this legacy program, reverse engineering these craft, dealing with these bodies. And so I don't think you can sit there and say this is the entire government coming up with this plan. I think this is very much being forced into the light by David Grush. And then, you had Commander David Fravor, you had Ryan Graves also at that hearing, but these guys are pilots. They're not high up in the government who are making decisions. David Grush was, however, very high up in the government, and he was making important decisions. And when he started investigating the UAP phenomenon, he came up with some pretty dire consequences, some pretty dire realizations and findings that he wanted to bring to the light, if we can trust his word. I trust him, you may not. Time will tell, right? Eventually, hopefully, we'll get a hold of some of this evidence. The only counterpoint to that I can think of is the fact that this evidence is so inherently classified that he wasn't able to even share it in this hearing. He needs to be able to get the right people in government into a SCIF, a secret meeting room where, he's able to reveal this, but these people have to have the right classification for him to do that. So is the public going to get privy to the information he knows? I'm doubtful of it, but I do remain cautiously optimistic about it. So I think the UFO phenomenon, the potential of war, the potential of another global disease hitting us is very likely. I think COVID was a primer in a way, and it showed us how society can kind of go apeshit if something like that goes. And imagine if the next pandemic that were to happen, imagine it having a kill rate of 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 50 times more than COVID does. Now that would probably be the straw that could break the camel's back as far as an event that could destabilize society and usher in some sort of more controlling government that is attempting to police the whole world because the society is kind of losing their minds. They're all scared out of their minds. And again, I think that there was a primer. We seem to come out the other end without everybody dying, but that doesn't mean the next one is going to be, we're not going to get so lucky potentially. So you have this convergence of all these crazy events going on simultaneously, and I do believe that is the cause. I do believe that is the source of why we feel this way. And I will end it with saying this. I do think it's justified. I think something's brewing. You guys can let me know the time frame of what you think. I don't know. There's a lot of speculation about it, but I do think that if you were to play this out for, let's even say 2 years, I think if we're just talking about probability, it's not that probable that one of those areas I just talked about, the economic front, the geopolitical, domestic front, the UFO phenomenon, all this stuff, one of them is going to go hot. One of them is going to pop off, and it's going to cause some paradigm altering event for us. Maybe it's either one day that kind of changes everything for us, or it's a series of events that rapidly unfold, pick up momentum, and it's like a snowball going down the hill, picking up steam, and a few events happen in succession. Potentially the war starts off, then a pandemic happens, or we get some giant reveal about the UFO phenomenon, and then the economy starts to tank. Whatever it may be, I do think something big, and I mean big, is coming. I felt this way for a few years now, but it's now coming to a head, and I don't think we can continue down this path without something big happening. Hopefully, I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong. I want us all to just have, booming economies. I want there to be no war. I want all these conflicts to be resolved. And I want the revelation of the UFO phenomenon very badly, but I don't want it to do anything that could potentially spiral society out of control. Now, if you were to ask me if I had to pick, society can't handle this information and it kind of changes us for the worse, would I still want the information to come out? Yes. I do not think anybody has a right to keep this from us. This is something that could change the way we think as humans. In the way that we operate in society. It could change everything, and they have no right. Whatever they think that they're protecting us from, it's not that everybody in the government's probably bad who is privy to this information. Many of them probably think we can't handle the truth. At the end of the day, I don't believe that they have the right to keep that from us. So something's coming. I want your guys' thoughts as to what that something is. I'm open to suggestions. I'm open to hearing counterpoints to that. But in my opinion, and the opinion of many other people out there, something big is going to be coming here soon. Not just the United States, probably the entire world, or at least the majority of it. Is there any way to prepare for it? Probably. There's a lot of prepper channels out there. I do watch a lot of them, but I think that what's coming could potentially be so big, so society altering that, unless you've got a bunker you can hide in, I don't know if there's any way to not be a part of it. If a conflict goes global here in World War III, it's going to be difficult to hide from this one, guys. I don't think our country would be backing a war. I think it'd be very hard to, unless we got deliberately attacked in a Pearl Harbor type situation, I don't think that our population is ready for a war. And I don't think we got the appetite for it. And in my opinion, that's a good thing. We should have no appetite for World War III, none whatsoever. And peace should be the primary leading factor in all of this stuff. And I don't think that's what our leaders, our powers that be, want. I think the industrial war complex, I think that they want war. I think potentially it could save their economies from collapsing, or it could cause the societies to collapse and the economies to tank. I don't know. I'm open to anything, but I do think something's coming, guys. I want your thoughts on this. Wrapping up, if you guys enjoy this type of content, I come out with a new episode every day, or at least I try to. As I said, this was a hybrid episode, but in general, I'm going to keep these three subjects, the UAP phenomenon, UFC news, and World War III geopolitical stuff, separate. But if this is your first time finding a video of mine, this was a rare exception to that rule. Do me a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I would love you guys. I appreciate that. It's free, it takes 1 second, and it means a lot to me. I'm just a guy out there that's doing something I'm passionate about, and I would love to see this thing grow. I'm going to do it regardless, whether I get 1 view or 1 million. This is one of my passions on top of making music. Those are the two things that really get me going. And yeah, I'm going to do them regardless, but it would mean the world to have your support. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed talking about this type of stuff, I also have a Discord channel. The link is in this bio or in the description to this video. And we talk about this news every day. It's starting to grow from people all over the place. We're small but growing. And if you'd like to be a fellow Martian, go ahead and join that link. We talk about news. We share stories, opinions, experiences, questions, etc. And then if you guys are listening to the audio only on like Spotify podcasts, Apple podcasts, do me a favor and just subscribe and leave a 5-star review. I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. Share this with a buddy if you could. And we'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Peace out, guys.